Number 1 Oregon beating number 3 Penn State 45-37 in an unexpected shootout. Honestly, if you told me it'd be a close game, I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like a 20-13 type of game. No, it was a shootout in this one. Let's go over the highest graded players, starting off with the Oregon Ducks, the only undefeated team left in college football and will be the number 1 overall team going into the college football playoff. Tez Johnson was outstanding in this game with an 84.7 grade. Tight end Kenyon Sadiq, who had 2 touchdown catches, 81.1. Nico Reed, the cornerback, 80.8. Running back Noah Whittington, 69.9. Tatum Tuioti, the edge defender, 69.2. And then Dillon Gabriel had a really good game as well, 81.1 grade. Let's go over to Penn State with their highest graded players in this game. Kobe King, linebacker, 80.3. Cornerback A.J. Harris, 78.8. Tight end Tyler Warren, 78.4. Devon J. Thomas, the defensive tackle, 76.4. Katron Allen, who showed more juice, I think, than I've seen from him really ever, 76.1. And then Drew Aller with a 70.2 grade. Dalton, for you, the stat that told the story in this Oregon shootout victory.
Okay, first thing I want to do is credit Will Stein for calling just a spectacular game, one of the best play-called games I've seen all season. But I think where it starts, and on paper, Penn State was actually the better rushing team in this game. But if I focus just on Oregon's offense, they started out early in this game stressing the fact that they wanted to run outside, right? You could tell as the game went on, they wanted to run outside and then throw inside right back over the middle when those windows open. And I think a big stat for me is Oregon, 5.5 yards per carry on first down. And there's a couple of Dillon Gabriel runs that are mixed in there, but for the running back, 6.2 yards per carry on first down, okay? And I think the way that they were able to get outside, control the edges, the outside zone run game, it opened up all those windows that Tez Johnson especially can work into, even the tight ends can work into at times. And Dillon Gabriel, I think, just got really comfortable throwing over the middle of the field. Those two things working in tandem, I thought, along with the tempo that Oregon played with, that controlled Penn State's defense. And that was part of what led Penn State's defense to struggle in this game. Run outside, throw over the middle, play with tempo. And I tell you all the time, you want to stop a great pass rush, a team like Penn State, run the football, play with tempo. You start wearing them out, right, in the front seven. And then you got linebackers, the thing chasing things east and west, and then you throw it right back over their inside shoulder, and Tez Johnson's flying down the middle of the field, right? I thought it was a spectacular game plan from Will Stein, and I want to go on the passing side of this too. Dillon Gabriel, and I'm going to get more on him, but over the middle third of the field, kind of an area I'm always talking about, right? 10 to 12, 182 yards, a touchdown, 89.6 passing grade. This was the idea. You could see it the whole way through. Run outside, throw inside, play with tempo, wear out Penn State, score 45 points.
Yeah, and really my set that goes into it as well was in the first half, Oregon scored on 71% of their drives. They scored on 6 out of 7 drives in the first half. They were going up and down the field. 5 out of 7 drives in the first half. 4 of those drives were touchdowns. They had 4 out of 7 drives in the first half, ended up being a touchdown. 31 points going into halftime. Dalton, my final score prediction was 31-20 or 30-24. It was 31-24 at halftime. So I would have gotten it right if it was 0-0 or been very close to getting it right if it was 0-0 the rest of the way. Obviously it wasn't, but Oregon just was going up and down the field in the first half. 284 yards for Oregon in the first half. They would have been on pace for well over 550 yards in the game if they kept up that pace. 0.26 EPA per play. They slowed down in the second half. They only scored 14 points after scoring 31 in the first half. But exploding for 31 in the first half is so hard for any team to match. Even one in Penn State, who I would argue this is the best we've ever seen Penn State's offense all year. They played an elite defense in Oregon, and they scored 37 points. It's the most points that Oregon has given up all year. Even more than the Ohio State game. They only gave up, I think, 31 points in the Ohio State game. Penn State scored 37 in this game. You mentioned it, Will Stein. We actually haven't vote because we were in the press box. We had a vote for MVP of this game. And we both voted for Tez Johnson. But I typed in Will Stein hoping to find his name somewhere. I couldn't vote for him because Will Stein was the MVP of this game. He was masterful as the offensive coordinator. And listen, we saw another former Oregon offensive coordinator in Kenny Dillingham be unbelievable, and we'll talk about that game in a little bit at Arizona State. I think Will Stein is in line for a head coaching job very soon. He is doing an unreal job with this Oregon offense. He did a great job with Bo Nix last year. They had one of the best offenses in the country. I think they were second in EPA per play last year. This year as well, one of the best offenses in the country. They can score on anyone. Anyone. Doesn't matter if it's Ohio State. Doesn't matter if it's Penn State. Doesn't matter who it is. They could score on anyone. They could score on Michigan as well. I mean, that's a really good defense too. So they were getting east-west in the run game, and then like you said, when Penn State attacked east-west, they went right down the middle, and that was a masterful game plan by him. And Tom Allen had difficulties out there, and really Penn State's overall defense had difficulties out there. And I was really surprised that Penn State gave up that many points, 45 points, and Will Stein is a big reason for that, and the entire Oregon offense is a big reason for that.
Whoever their opponent is, and maybe especially if it's somebody, say, like Josh Heupel in Tennessee, I think the 2 times that we've seen Penn State live this season, we have seen them struggle with tempo. You remember when they got ahead of Ohio State 10-0 also. Chip Kelly got Ohio State back in that game because he picked up the pace. He got the ball to the perimeter because his offensive line was struggling. But it's a similar idea where you kind of work them east and west and you move at tempo. USC, I should mention too, in the first half of that game when, they were up 20-6 on Penn State at halftime. Tempo, get the ball in space, make them chase and make tackles in the open field. I think that's a theme, and I think when you're talking about if they have to play a fast-paced team like Tennessee, even if they have to play in Indiana likes to get up tempo and run their RPOs and do all that at a fast pace. I think that is an issue for Penn State's defense because when you get in tempo, 1, you start wearing guys out, and 2, can't get in all the fancy blitz packages, right? You can't. You just run it. You got to go 4-man rush. You got to simplify the play calls. So I think this is something we could be looking at, and I need to look into more numbers on this for the whole season, but we have seen Penn State struggle in multiple games when teams pick up the pace on them, and Oregon went at a turbo pace for this entire game. Again, like you mentioned, Will Stein did a great job. This is something we're going to be looking for. I'm going to check more of the tape and the numbers on this exact thing because I think the pace, didn't you tell me, was it Kobe King throwing up on the goal line
Literally,
after one
first drive of the game, throwing on the goal line. Yeah.
They don't want to play at that pace on defense. It's a bigger team. It's a team that doesn't, they are athletic, but when offenses start speeding up on them, it is an issue. We've seen it twice in person now with the Ohio State game as well. So I think it's something matchup-wise that I'm curious to see who they're playing in this first round and if that's going to continue to be a trend. Yeah,
Will Stein, only 35 years old, by the way. I was looking into where he went to college because Kenny Dillingham went to college at Arizona State. So I was looking at what his alma mater is. He went to Louisville. So maybe if Jeff Brom ever gets a bigger job, I know Jeff Brom has a lot of ties to Louisville as well, but I don't know.
If I'm Louisville, I'm holding on to Jeff Brom.
Oh, I know. So am I.
I'm holding on to Jeff Brom for dear life.
I'm just saying if he ever leaves for whatever reason, Will Stein will be my first call probably. He is unbelievable. So let's get to the most impressive part of this game. Dawn, for you, what was the most impressive part?
I'll tell you what, we came into this season talking about there is no better quarterback to replace Bo Nix in this system than Dillon Gabriel, and this is the exact type of game we were getting at. He knew the assignment too. We're trying to run outside. We're trying to throw north and south. We're trying to run with tempo. Get rid of the ball quickly. 2.51 average time to throw. But I mean, just in general here, 22 of 32, 283 yards, 4 touchdowns. You know what's wild about it? No big time throws. An 85.8 passing grade with no big-time throws, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because we're getting the ball where we need to in an efficient manner. And I'll tell you what, getting rid of it quickly in the same way that Bo Nix would last year, Penn State, they blitzed on just about half his dropbacks, 17 out of 35. And he was terrific against the blitz. So they tried everything to get to Gabriel, and they just couldn't do it. And I think this is the game where we sit there and we finally not finally got it because he's had a spectacular year. He might be sitting in New York for the Heisman ceremony.
Yeah, I think he will after this game.
But this is the moment where you go, this is why he was the perfect replacement for Bo Nix. It's efficient. It's accurate. We know what the game plan is. We get rid of the ball quickly. We do everything we do, or I should say everything we need to do to beat a defense and a pass rush like this. Dillon Gabriel was spectacular. He's been spectacular just about the entire season. Fully deserves to go at least to the Heisman ceremony. We both don't believe he should win it over either Hunter or Ginty, but if he's third, he's third. And I got no issue with that. He's put up a similar caliber season to what Bo Nix did last year in the same system, and he was a perfect replacement. And he's getting him in the portal is a primary reason they could win the national title.
Yeah, absolutely. How about him in the biggest games this year as well, Don? 93.6 grade against Oregon State in the Civil War. Then he went out with an 87.6 grade against Ohio State in the biggest regular season game of the entire season, some would argue. Against Michigan, 90.3 grade. Against Washington, their rival that they just could never beat, 90.6 grade. And in this one, 86.8 passing grade.
Terrific.
Every big game,
down the stretch,
he comes up massive.
And I'll tell you what, the one thing I'm most encouraged by, and I think it was Oregon's biggest weakness earlier in the season, was they're finishing drives in the red zone. They had red zone offense issues earlier this season, and in this game, they had no such issues, and it's really been that way for the better part of 5 or 6 weeks. If that's patched up now completely, I think we just have to sit here and say, obviously undefeated, obviously number one in the country, polls, committees, whatever. Right now, they're the best team in the country.
Yeah.
And this, I think we need to talk more about the fact that Oregon is the favorite to win a national title. Especially after what we saw from Georgia and Texas yesterday, what we've seen from Ohio State against Michigan. Oregon already beat Ohio State. Ohio State's going to have an extra game to play. Oregon should be the odds-on favorite right now to win a national title, and it's not bluster. It's not just because they're number one. They've earned it.
No, they have, and I think they're the best team in the country right now. I mean, you look at their roster. There's no glaring weakness. There is a glaring weakness for everyone else. Everyone else, you can point to one thing and say, "Hey, if they lose, because I know it's going to be because of that."
There was a point that I hit last year with Michigan where I just went, "This is the most complete team in the country. If you're going to beat them, it's going to take just an absolute.
You got to beat them. They're not going to lose.
You've got. It's going to take an incredible effort to beat them. It's going to be the same way with Oregon.
Absolutely. I'm going to go with his best receiver, and that is Tez Johnson, with a 90.5 receiving grade in this game, the MVP of the Big Ten championship game. 11 of 12 of his targets, he caught them for 181 yards and a touchdown, 121 yards after the catch. Dalton, he averaged nearly 6.5 yards per route run. If you don't know, the best receivers in the NFL and college football are averaging like 3.5.
3.5, yep.
That's the bet. He's doubling up that in this game. He is small at 5'10", 165 pounds. But, man, he is a good football player, knows how to get open, knows how to win after the catch, even at that size. And he proved, and there's some people, I don't know who, but there are some people I've heard who said, now that Bo Nix, his adopted brother, is gone, how much he's going to be involved in the offense? Is that just a brotherly connection thing? Nah, he's a stud, man. He is a stud. Really cool story as well. Obviously, he gets adopted into the Bo Nix family, the Nix family. He wanted to go to Oregon. Oregon did not offer him out of high school. Bo said he had a Oregon sweatshirt that he would wear to high school all the time. Always wanted to go to Oregon, never got offered by them. Bo obviously went to Auburn. Tez had to go to Troy. Tez killed it at Troy. Tez was like legitimately one of the best receivers in the country at Troy. Bo, of course, transfers to Oregon. And then Tez gets offered at Oregon. And that wasn't just a feel-good story. They offered Tez Johnson because he's a star receiver. It wasn't like, oh, he's the adopted brother of the quarterback bringing it. No, he is a star receiver. And now Bo's in the NFL, and Tez is still a star receiver. I would take this guy in the NFL. I really would. I think there are a lot of people who are like, oh, he's 165 pounds. He's quite literally my size, 5'10", 165 pounds. I'm a little shorter. I might be 5'9", but I say I'm 5'10" on my hinge profile. But Tez Johnson, dude, he is so freaking good, and he's 165 pounds, and he's still so good after the catch. That's the crazy part. Like, he's breaking tackles out there at 165 pounds against guys that are almost like 50 pounds heavier than him, honestly. And the defensive backs were 50 pounds heavier than him out there. So I love Tez Johnson, dude. He's a stud receiver, and I would be willing to spend maybe a day 2 pick on this guy in the NFL draft.
I think so. I think, look, if Tank Dell can get taken in the second round and be productive in the league, I don't think there's any reason Tez Johnson can't.
Yep.
And as important as slot receivers are now, I think, look, the 2 best in the country this year were Xavier Restrepo and Tez Johnson, and I think they very easily could both go in the second round. I think they're 2 terrific football players, and whatever limitations they have, but if they're just slot receivers, that's okay. Everyone's in 11 personnel now, and there's a role for those guys. So I'm with you. About probably late second, early third round, somewhere between 50 and 70 for Tez Johnson. I would have no issue with that. I get it. He's super talented.
Absolutely. So before we went to the next game, I just want to shout out the Nittany Lions a little bit because I know we praised Oregon a lot for, and deservingly so, but Dalton, I said it when we were walking to the car. I said, listen, if Penn State lost this game 20-13, that's one thing. I actually feel better about losing this game 45-37 than I would about a 20-12 winner like that. Because now I think Penn State proved they can score. Like before, it was like, okay, you need the defense to carry you to victories. Now it's like, no, they just scored 37 points on one of the best defenses in college football. Andy Kolodnicki, this is his best game of the entire season, in my opinion. I thought he was outstanding in this game. Obviously, they came up just short, but Drew Aller had some huge throws in this game. I would argue he's QB3 in the NFL draft right now behind Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, whichever order you want to have them in. But I would argue Drew Aller is QB3. I was blown away by the Penn State offense, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for being in this game. If you told me Oregon was scoring 45 points on Penn State, I would have said Penn State loses this game by 24. And they ended up losing this game by a single possession because that offense was that freaking good yesterday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They had a ton of balance, first of all. Allen and Singleton were spectacular in the run game. And I think when they have balance, and we've seen this before, we've seen it at Kansas with Andy Kotelnicki, when he has balance and he's got a two-way go, good luck. And I think, and Aller himself, they had a shot to tie this game late in the fourth quarter, and then the interception, obviously, in the go ball to Harrison Wallace. But if Aller's going to play like that, and Katron Allen's going to play like that, you've got a team that's a different type of dangerous. Because, you're right. That's what we thought, is that a lot of games this year, elite defense, but scratching and clawing on offense.
Yeah.
If we can get into it, if we can get an offense in the playoff that's not just scratching and clawing, and they're running the ball like this and Aller's playing like this, now you talk about a sleeper to make some sort of run here. But that's what we need to see in the next game. Whoever they're playing in the next game, it's going to be another really good defense. They need the balance, and they need Aller to continue making big throws.
You can make the argument they lost by basically a touchdown to the two best teams in the country. In Ohio State and in Oregon. So they proved they can hang. They can hang with the big boys of college football. Also, again, I know people don't love hearing this, but it's a different playing field right now. Oregon and Ohio State, NIL-wise, is way above what Penn State got NIL-wise, and Penn State's still right there. So any of the James Franklin haters who want that guy fired, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. This is the right coach for Penn State. I truly, truly believe that. But Penn State came up just short in this one, and we'll see what happens in the playoff, though. I don't know where they're going to be in the playoff. Where would you put them?
I think
behind Texas and Notre Dame, but above Ohio State, or would you put Ohio State above them too because they beat them? That's a really interesting conversation.
Feels like that 7-8 pocket is where they sit, considering they came into this week number 3 in the way they played. I could 7 or 8. We'll see how the head-to-head plays out. But I think they're playing a home game.
Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.